This video is brought to you by the 3-Minute Board Game patrons. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon.
Kia ora koutou and welcome to this special video about small box games. These games are often described as being so small you can slip them into your pocket or you can put them inside a handbag. And today we want to take that idea and dial it up to 11 in what I'm calling the 3-Minute Board Games Small Box Handbag Challenge. Now let's go over the rules for the challenge. First of all, you need to get yourself a handbag. So this is one I've borrowed from Steph. It's one of her old ones that she doesn't mind me shredding. 2, you'll need to get as many small box games as you can and try to cram them into said handbag. You must be able to close the handbag and any pockets on it must also be sealed. And finally, every single game you put into the handbag has to be something you actually want to play. Now with that preamble out of the way, I'm going to go through this handbag and all of the small box games that I managed to jam into it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why they went in there and why they are entertaining games that I would be happy to play. You can think of the whole handbag challenge as a single framing device for me to talk about a whole bunch of small box games instead of doing individual videos on them, because that's exactly what this is. Anyway, let's open the bag and I'll run through the games one by one really quickly. So let's open the bag. And the very first game contained within the bag is Bananagrams. Those of you familiar with Bananagrams might be wondering why the hell it's in the bag, but for those of you who aren't, it's like Scrabble on methamphetamine. This is a game that Stephanie absolutely loves. She loves Bananagrams. It's a real-time word game. And as you are completing words and letters, you yell out peel, and when you do, everyone else has to grab another letter. This leads to a crazy amount of carnage and confusion when one player gets on a roll and keeps shouting peel, 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 as the other players panic and scramble and try to catch up. This is what happens when Steph plays the game all the time. She is very good at it, and watching her make her family squirm is quite fun to watch. This one is definitely for Stephanie first because it's one of her favorite games to play with people. But Bananagrams is a low complexity game. It's fast to play, fast to teach, and it's sold in toy stores. It's very, very family friendly and the kind of game you can play with a bunch of different groups. The second game in the box is One Deck Galaxy. Now this is a 1 to 2 player game, but I've only ever played it as a solo game, so all of my comments and experience about it will be from the solo point of view. It's the sequel to One Deck Dungeon, and it shares a lot of DNA in common with that game. They're both dice manipulation games, and you'll start off with a basic set of dice, and you'll try to build up that dice pool through the course of the game and get a bunch of abilities that allow you to change die results. You're trying to complete these specific challenges that require specific dice values and colors on them. So every time you get a tool that allows you to change a die's result, it's something that will help you later on. And as you progress through the game, the challenges get harder and harder and harder. The multi-use cards in this game do a ton of work. So each card in the main deck will be either equipment or an encounter or a skill you can have. There's a whole bunch of different effects on each card, hence the name One Deck Galaxy. So yeah, if you're looking for a good little solo game, One Deck Galaxy or One Deck Dungeon could go in your handbag shoebox collection. The next game in the bag is a party game classic, and it is Sushi Go. Sushi Go is a very inoffensive game. It's a card drafting game played over 3 rounds. We are selecting different bits of sushi, and the different sushi works in different combinations, and you try to get the most points by the end of 3 rounds. It is delightful. It's also in a metal tin, so it's very hard wearing. Slightly one of the bigger games I've managed to jam in here, but it's a game that is universally popular whenever I've pulled it out because it's such a basic, simple game, but there's enough to it to keep you engaged. Like, you're probably not going to get your hardcore gaming crowd who wants to play Twilight Imperium for 12 hours sitting down and playing 10 games of Sushi Go back to back, but that could happen. But for families and for kids especially, Sushi Go is a great game. Looks good, really simple to learn, and it has nice core card drafting game system to it. Definitely a fun game for any small collection. Now those were 3 of the bigger games in here, and I'm just going to deal with the smart Alex straight out of the box because someone right now is watching the video going, all you need is 1 deck of playing cards and you have access to 1,000 different games. And yes, you are absolutely correct. A standard set of playing cards, and any standard set of playing cards, gives you access to dozens and dozens of games. One could argue that's all you need. If you're stuck in a cabin and you can have to take one thing with you, a standard set of playing cards is definitely a good option, because there's solo games you can play with it. There's multiplayer games you can play with it. And, if you need to gamble to decide who gets to eat who in that cabin when all the food runs out, you can also gamble with them. So, on the note of solo gaming with these cards, Klondike Solitaire is the classic solo game that you play with these. But there's another game that you play with a standard set of cards. But I personally think you should be good people and support the people who made the game and buy a set of their unique cards, because that game is Regicide. Now again, you can play Regicide with a standard set of cards, but it is nice to have the official Regicide cards. And I'm a little bit biased because these guys are from New Zealand and they had a really nice sleeper hit with Regicide. It got very, very popular simply because it has great gameplay. There wasn't any slick marketing or anything. It uses standard cards, so if people don't want to give them a cent, you don't have to, but it really would be nice to do that. This is a great solo and cooperative game using a basic deck of cards. You can teach it to anyone, but it's remarkably deep for what it is. And it's one of those games that has become a bit of a sleeper hit, especially in the solo gaming community. So Regicide, a cooperative game using a standard set of cards, but definitely go check out Badges from Mars. They've been working on, I think, a Regicide Legacy game, and hopefully that's coming out shortly, because that way they can, hopefully make a little bit of money off their idea, a little bit more than they have. Because, as I say, you can play that with a standard set of cards. Digging into the handbag further, we have another game here from the publishers of One Deck Dungeon and One Deck Galaxy, and that game is Red 7. Red 7 comes with a whole bunch of different colored cards numbered 1 through 7. And each of those cards has a numerical value on it, and each of the colors represents a special rule in the game. And the catch on this game is when it is your turn, at the end of your turn, you must be winning the game or you are out. So you can do that by either playing a card in front of you to increase the size and scale of your tableau to match the current rule, or by playing a card that changes the current rule, or by doing both. This is one of those great 10 to 15 minute card games that has steam coming out of people's ears as they play a hand and they go, oh, I'm really not sure, I can't do it, and then they bail out. It's a lot of fun, and it's very, very simple. Really family friendly too as well. A friend of mine plays this with their 8-year-old and they have a really good time. The next game is from Japan and it's known by multiple names. This version is called Photograph, but it's also known as Wind the Film. In Photograph, cards come to your hand and they stay in a set position as you pick them up. So when you pick up cards, they go to the back of your hand and you have to play them from the front of your hand. But in between that, you're allowed to pick up one card and move it backwards. You're allowed to wind the film backwards. It's a set collection game as well, where you're trying to place these cards in numeric order. And it's remarkably tricky and remarkably deep. It's a real head scratcher about how you draft the cards, get them into your hand, and then reposition them. Now, there's a lot of card games that do that gimmick, and we're going to be looking at a couple more of them, but Photograph, I think, is the most intense of them. Because at the end of the game, you'll only have one card in your hand, and every incorrect placement hurts you. It's a complexity step up from a lot of other small box Japanese card games, and one I think really suits more serious and experienced gamers. Highly recommend it. The next game in the box is Trio, which I believe is also known as Nana in Japan. It's another Japanese small box game. This one is very simple and straightforward, and rounds can take a couple of minutes. What you're aiming to do here is try to score trios. There's a little bit of a memory game going on, because you can ask about card positions in people's hands and also look at face down cards on the table. And if you correctly deduce where all three of a card type are, you can take those and score those. And the first person to score 7 points worth of those wins. This is an amazing filler game, and probably one of the simplest ones in here. You can play this with younger children as well. And it's so fast and so inoffensive that it just cannot overstay its welcome. The next game I'm going to pull out of here is another one of Steph's games, and that's Elevenses. It's a game about making high tea. In this game, you have 11 cards, numbered 1 through 11, and you start with 8 of them randomly shuffled face down in front of you and 3 in your hand. You're trying to build these cards face up in front of you in a numeric sequence, with the most cards face up to score the maximum amount of points. The problem is, people can steal cards off you. They can steal cards out of your hands. They can swap cards. There's a whole bunch of back and forth in Elevenses, and it makes it quite an engaging and interactive game. And I love that that's juxtaposed against this really pleasant theme of making tea, because the game's quite dirty. It's all about how can I screw the person sitting next to me? How can I take that card off them and put it in my own tableau to score the maximum amount of points? And how can I end the game instantly to stop everyone else being able to get their plans together? Elevenses also has a theme that you can play with a lot of people. This is just so damn pleasant, making tea. It's not like war or setting fire to things or genocide or anything else like that. It's just a cup of tea as a board game. So yeah, I actually quite like Elevenses. I thought it was going to be a bit of a wet fish kind of game when I looked at it, but I was really pleased with the level of interactivity it had. And speaking of games with high levels of interactivity, the next one up we have is Cockroach Poker. Cockroach Poker doesn't really have anything to do with poker, but it is a bluffing game. In the game, there are sets of 8 different creepy crawlies. And when it's your turn, you draw a card, you look at it, and you place it face down and push it towards someone and tell them what kind of creepy crawly it is. And you can tell the truth, or you can lie. They then decide if they're going to agree or disagree with what you said, or look at the card and then pass it on to someone else. If the player the card is being pushed to guesses wrong, they have to put the card face up in front of them. And the first player to collect any 4 of one critter type loses the game. However, if you guess correctly what's being handed to you, the person who passes you the card has to put that in front of them. Very simple, very straightforward, but it's hilarious. My group in particular, they get to telling very tall stories about what's in front of them. It's not just a cockroach they're pushing your way. They'll describe it in great detail, exactly what the cockroach is doing, that it's wearing a little bow tie. They'll just weave elaborate stories, and it's funny watching the friends of mine who are really good at lying, and it's hilarious watching the ones who aren't. Cockroach Poker. It's light, it's fast, it's fun. If you have the right group that can, get into it and tell a few stories, it's a hell of a good time. Well, next up, through some tricky magic, I'm going to fit the entire box of Gloomhaven in here. Ooh, it's Gloomhaven, buttons and bugs. This thing is remarkable. It is a single-player, full game of Gloomhaven in many ways, with a full campaign and different characters and monsters in this tiny, tiny box. It is an achievement, what they've managed to do. How much game they've packed into Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs. It's not as much game as there is in the original Gloomhaven, but it's almost as much as in Jaws of the Lion, just jammed in here. Absolutely stunning achievement as far as games go. And if you're a solo gamer and you like Gloomhaven in particular, you should really have a look at this, because it's mind-blowing just how much they achieved with Buttons and Bugs. It's a game I should probably do a full-scale review of at some point, but I thought it'd be good to feature it first in this video, because I'm, again, flabbergasted at just how much game is jammed into this very, very, very tiny Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs box. Yeah, Gloomhaven, one player, tiny box. Absolutely amazing. Next up we have Ohanami, a set collection game that's played over 3 distinct rounds. So in this game you'll be drafting numerical valued cards with different colors on them and arranging them in 3 different gardens. And you can only place cards sort of above or below where they are. So you'll have an arrangement like this. I'll bring up an arrangement of how it looks. And when you draft on a card, you have to put it in a sequence. And if you can't do that, well, you can't take the card. The tricky thing in Ohanami is you score points over 3 rounds. So the placement of your garden and the value of the different cards in it changes through the course of the game. So you start off by having 10 cards dealt to you, and you'll place 2 of those cards down and then pass them around. It is a drafting game, but you're drafting not just for the turn ahead, but to build your position for later turns as well. It shares a lot in common with Sushi Go, aside from I think it's a step up in terms of complexity and the amount of thinking you have to do. It's also really pretty, and I like the Japanese garden theme. I think this game's a really good fit for people who don't necessarily dislike Sushi Go, but are looking for something a bit chunkier, a bit heavier, and a bit more game to it. I like it a lot. Next up, we have a competitive game, but it's not one I've ever played as a competitive game. I've only ever played the solo mode of Sprawlopolis. It's a tile placement game, or a card placement game, where the cards are the tiles, and you're trying to match up roads in different building districts. It's only an 18 card game at its core, but it's remarkable how much depth there is for just 18 cards, because the 18 cards are double-sided. On one side you'll have the city blocks, and these are the things you'll be placing, and in solo you'll get to place 15 of them. And on the other side are the scoring rules, so there'll be slightly different scoring rules each and every time you play. This version of the game also comes with a ton of add-ons and modules to it, but I haven't really got into those because I still find the original 18 card game challenging after a bunch of different plays. It's really soothing as well. Like, I love games where I get to solve spatial puzzles, and Sprawlopolis is a great spatial puzzle. And somehow, just because of the 18 cards, some are always in, some are always out, and the scoring is different, it feels remarkably fresh every time I play it. Yeah, really impressed with Sprawlopolis. I've heard a lot of good things about these guys' button show games before, but that's one of the first ones I managed to get my hands on, because in New Zealand, getting your hands on some of these small box games can get a bit tricky, because a lot of the local stores don't stock them, and when you're shipping stuff, you might as well ship things that are a little bit bigger than those, because you can end up paying almost as much, if not more, in postage and packaging than you do for the actual game itself. So some of these have cost me more money than they should have, because very few of these are review copies. In fact, looking on the table, I can only see 2 review copies, and that was Regicide and Gloomhaven Button and Bugs. I don't think there's any other in the box either. So yeah, publishers tend to send me bigger games. They don't tend to send me the small ones. Next up, we have a game from Oink Games, another publisher who it's hard to find stuff in New Zealand for, and that game is Scout. Now, Scout works a little bit like Wind the Film or Photograph that we looked at earlier in the video. Scout is a game where you have a number of cards in your hand, and once they're in your hand, you're not allowed to change the position of them. The tricky thing with Scout is each card is double-ended, and you decide what end the card goes into your hand when you pick it up, or when you first pick up your cards. And herein lies the trick of Scout, because you're trying to play cards out of your hand in order to build combos within that hand. And each time you play, you have to try to beat what's currently on the table. If you can't, you have to take a card to your hand. And you can take that card face up or face down. So things get very tricky. And you can feel very clever when you play cards out of your hand to open up big straights or big sets within your hand that you can play later. The round ends once one player runs out of all their cards, and every card someone has left over in their hand is a negative point. And I have played more than one game where I've ended up on a negative score at the end, because I am terrible at Scout. I think of all the games in this collection that I'm going to show you, if you were going to pick one to play with the widest number of people, family, kids, friends, experienced gamers, casual gamers, older people, Scout would probably be my top pick out of all of them. I think it is a phenomenal spawn box game, and I think it has such a wide audience, and so many people will enjoy it, because it hits that sweet spot of being simple to teach but hard to master, and it makes you feel very clever when you win, which I don't very often. All right, next in here we have Six Nimmt, also known as Take 5. This is a German game, and it is very, very fun. So in Six Nimmt, you'll have a row of sets of cards in front of you, and each player will be dealt 10 cards. You'll then have to play those cards hidden each round, and then put them out and play them in numeric sequence. If you play a card below the value of any of the sets currently on display, you have to pick one of the sets and take it as negative points. If you play a card between two values already on display, you place that card on the lower value. And if your card is higher value than any other card there, it goes on the highest value column. The problem here is every single one of these columns is going to fill up. And if you are the player to place the 6th card in any column, you take that entire column as negative points and push your card to the end. There's no way to score points in this game. You only score negative points. So every single trick you lose, every single card you take brings you closer to defeat. And it's the first player to score negative 55 points over multiple rounds loses the game. 6 nimmt is chaotic. It's probably not the deepest game. It's probably not the most strategic game in the world, but it is a good filler game. It's a good time. And generally when it's played at the table, everyone has a laugh. I am also utterly terrible at this game. And in fact, this set, which I gave to a friend of mine because I have another version of it, I never won a game with this particular set of cards. In fact, I think I came last in every single game, bar 1 or 2 of them, that I played with this, because I am terrible at 6 nimmt. You might be better, but the thing is, I'm terrible at the game, and I lose all the time. And yet I still find it a good time, and I still find it a fun experience. It's just such a fun little silly game. The version I have of this game, which is a review copy, is the Anniversary Edition. It looks a little something like this, but it's too big to fit in a small box collection like this. Coming up next, we have another cooperative game, and that game is Hanabi. Hanabi is a cooperative game where you're trying to stack different sets of cards in sequence to set off fireworks. So the cards come in different colors and are numbered 1 through 5, and as a group you have to place them in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to set off that stack of fireworks. That sounds really, really easy. The trick is you can't see your own cards. You play the whole game with your hand facing outwards, which means when it's other players' turns, they can spend an action token to give you a piece of information. They can tell you, that's a blue card, or those 2 are 1s. And then you have to formulate a plan based on the information that's given to you. And it's maddening because you can see everyone else's cards and you can extrapolate a lot of information from that. But occasionally there'll just be one other person who just is on a different wavelength to everyone else. And you'll be like, that's a 3. And then they'll play another card and you'll be like, what's going on here? It's fascinating because you can see which people are resonating with you and clicking with you in the communication and which people just aren't getting it. And I think Hanabi is a great time. I also love that even if you lose, if you fail the game, you still score points based on how many cards you put down. So you never really lose because getting all 25 is very, very hard. Like scoring maximum points is very tricky in the game. So it's all about trying to beat your last score or get it as close as you can to your last score. It also takes all of 15 minutes to play through as well. Neat game. I can see why it's been so popular for so long. Next up, we have one of the more obscure games in here, and that is Baby Dragon Bedtime from Tin Star Games. I actually think this was a review copy as well. This game is utter madness. It's a real-time engine building game. You throw all the cards out in front of you, and you play a card, and it allows you to do stuff on the table. But everyone's doing that simultaneously. So you're flipping cards over, picking them up, shuffling them, flipping them up and trying to look for treasure and trying not to, wake mama. It's very hard to describe this game without showing people playing it because it is just frenetic. It's real-time deck building. What more can I say? There's nothing like it out there. It's a unique game. It's probably not for everyone because it is so absolutely wacky, but what a different game and nothing quite like it out there. And yeah, utter madness. Baby Dragon Bedtime. Very, very neat little game. And I'm keeping my copy because I think it's a hoot. This bag is nearly empty, but not quite. We have one last big box in here, and that is Dark Overlord, which isn't much of a game, really. I'll be honest here. If you are looking for a actual competitive experience or gameplay experience, Dark Overlord might not be it. what Overlord is a bullshit enabler. It puts people in the position of being minions. One player is the evil Overlord, and there's been a scheme they've hatched, and something's gone wrong. And each of the other players is one of those minions, and they're trying to worm their way out of it and blame other people. So through card play, which acts as prompts, they try to deflect the blame from themselves onto someone else. So it's like a collaborative storytelling experience more than a game. And my friends are such bullshitters. So when we play this, it is an absolute riot watching them come up with the most ridiculous, ludicrous reasons to throw each other under the bus. Overlord, if you have a group that's into role-playing as well, and not just straight up board gaming, and they like that sort of character stuff and going, oh, sorry sir, it wasn't me, it was because of, and going off on a tear about why the person sitting next to them is completely incompetent and needs to be fed to a dragon, then it would be a game for that group. If you like sitting in silence and you don't like acting or role-playing, or if you're quite a conservative or quiet person, it's probably not for you, because you need to buy into the conceit. You need to get into the idea that it's about silly voices, it's about begging for mercy, it's about throwing other people under the bus. And if you do get that, it's a pretty good time. I say, it's not a deep game, and you don't really play it to win. You play it for the fun, silly stories that come out of it. Right, digging back in here, we have... It's a classic. It's Love Letter. I kind of think Love Letter is one of those games that, you can't really go wrong having a copy of Love Letter around the house, in your bag, or wherever you're going, because it is a great game that you can teach anyone. You can play in 5 or 10 minutes, play a couple of rounds, everyone has a good time, and then you put it away and you forget about it. It's just the quintessential filler game. And we've already done an in-depth review of that on the channel that you can check out here. And that leaves the 2 pouches on this handbag, because we've actually cleared out the handbag proper. It is empty. We just have the 2 pouches at the end, and in those I've put Mintworks and Mint Cooperative. Now, I really like Mintworks. I think Mint Cooperative's okay. I'm reasonably happy to play it, but I think these are both really neat games, and I've always loved the Minton kind of thing. I understand, however, that the company behind these has gone bust, so they're kind of hard to find, and also that the last couple of games in the series were trash. So Mintworks, if you can find a copy of it, this is like legitimately a good game. Like, Mintworks, it's a worker placement game in a tin, leans into its minty theme. Steph and I have played this at the movies, outside the movies, waiting for the movie to start. And I've taken it with me on tour and holiday constantly. Mint Cooperative's one I only picked up a little while ago, but it's fine. It's a co-op game, fits in a tin. They're hard wearing, and there's also Mint Delivery that I have, and that's okay. That one's not quite as good as these 2, but we've done a full video on Mintworks as well if you want to check that out. But as I say, that company's kind of defunct, I believe, so they might be pretty hard to get a hold of. But if you do, Mintworks is a really good small box game. Right, that is that. That is one empty bag. That's how much we managed to stuff in there. All of these games. And I do have a bunch more small box games, but these are the ones that we managed to fit in here into one handbag. And I think that's pretty good going. And no, I didn't do any sleight of hand or magic tricks to stuff games into the bag while you weren't looking. This was all one take. I've just edited out where I've had typos and stuff, so I've just edited out corrections, like the many mistakes I just made. So yeah, I'll put a full list of the games in the description, and hopefully I've remembered to put up the box and the name on the screen during the video so you can look these up. These are pretty fly-by-night reviews. Hopefully they gave you a little taste of what these games are, and if you're interested in them, you can dig deeper on another channel. And to finish off, I'd just like to say that I think there's a lot in small box games. Some of these games are legitimately deep. I kind of banged on about it, but Buttons and Bugs is a legitimately deep game. Sprawlopolis is insanely good for what it is. Scout, I think you can play with anyone and anywhere. It's such a good game. Regicide, really good co-op and solo game. And Dark Overlord is an absolute hoot with the right group. There's a lot of good experiences in small games, and you can take them with you, as I say, in your handbag, in your pocket. You can just have one available when you need some time to kill. You can take them on holiday with you. And I think a game doesn't need to be in a big box to be a great game, and there's a ton of great games down here. And just a reminder, 3 Minute Board Games does not do paid content. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon or joining our YouTube membership. And I'll just double check which ones of these games were review copies, and I'll put that up on the screen as well. Just so we're 100% above board about exactly what was comped and what was not. And until next time, people, take care.